Now, a bit of the news. This is Canada, China, Part 3. From the CBC. Canada's ties to China's military underscore the weird contradictions in its foreign policy. It's been obvious for some time that there is something weird about the way Canada approaches its relationship with China. A disconnect brought into sharp relief this week by the news that Global Affairs and the Department of National Defense were not on the same page when it came to military ties and training involving the People's Liberation Army. In some respects, the volcanic online political eruption which followed, stories in the Globe and Mail and other media outlets based on exclusive access to information documents was predictable, as was the flurry of finger-pointing in the House of Commons on Thursday and Friday. Diplomats were alarmed when General Jonathan Vance, the country's senior military commander, canceled winter military exercises with the PLA in 2019, fretting that it might aggravate Beijing or make the lives of Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor even worse. What's missing, though, is a recognition that Canada's policy toward a rising China has been contradictory and incoherent for almost a decade, maybe more. And Charles Burton, a political science at Brock University in St. Catharines, Ontario, and a respected China expert at the Macdonald Laurier Institute. Cabinets, it's a quote now, cabinets were always split on China, whether it's liberal or conservative, Burton said, referring to debates more than 3 decades ago during the government of former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney. It is more urgent than ever in the context of an increasingly belligerent and assertive China to present a united political front, he added. This is really about the defense of our sovereignty and the security on matters over which there is consensus across the political spectrum in Canada, he said. Defense Minister Harjit Sajjan, in an attempt at political damage control late this week, made a point of saying that Chinese troops are no longer training for winter warfare at Garrison Petawawa, Ontario. Harjit Sajjan, by the way, is part of the Canadian Liberals, Canadian Liberal Party, the same party that Trudeau is a member of. And if you, they sound very much like the American Liberal Party, so that means that they would be more heavily leaning towards China. So, he also rather meekly noted that the exchange and training program of the PLA was instituted in August 2013 under the Conservatives, while defense critic James Bazan, one of the most vocal and fiery opponents this week, was Parliamentary Secretary of Defense. Bazan's retort was along the lines of, that was then, and this is now. The defense minister knows full well that the Chinese government back then and the Chinese government today are completely different, Bazan said during question period on Thursday. It was a different time, no question. Chinese President Xi Jinping had taken office only a few months before, and the Department of National Defense, tasking order that established the exchange program, obtained by CBC News under Access to Information, noted that working with the PLA complements the Government of Canada-led efforts to broaden our bilateral relationship with China. After years of hectoring and hammering China, the Conservatives under former Prime Minister Stephen Harper had decided that limited engagement was the way to go. And here's where Canada's curious incoherence comes into play. At precisely the moment the former chief of the defense staff, the now retired General Tom Lawson, was penning the Canadian military's marching orders on closer cooperation with the PLA, the Foreign Affairs Ministry, led at the time by John Baird, was firing off flares about China's unilateral declaration of an air defense zone in the East China Sea. It was a bellwether moment. The U.S. had indicated deep concern over the establishment of the Chinese ADIZ, stating that the U.S. views this development as a destabilizing attempt to alter the status quo in the region, and that this move increases the risk of misunderstanding and miscalculations, said in November 23, 2013 briefing note to Baird obtained by CBC News in 2017. More broadly, the rise of China is reshaping the strategic landscape. Burton said the rise of President Xi marked the beginning of the new, more aggressive China. The establishment of the Air Zone, now largely forgotten against a backdrop of fortified official islands in the South China Sea, reports of Uyghurs in concentration camps, and the haze of tear gas in Hong Kong marked the first step. That would be the establishment of the Air Zone marked the first step of the new aggressive China. So, were our politicians and senior leaders paying attention not only to events, but to what other federal departments were saying? According to what former Foreign Affairs Minister and current Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland had to say in question period this week, the answer is yes. I have long personal experience reporting on authoritarian communist regimes, and I am very aware of the threat they pose, she said. Here's the question no one seemed to ask this week. Why was the military exchange and training program still going on even before hostage diplomacy swept up the two Michaels? National Defense is no stranger to suspicions about China, having spent an enormous amount of time quietly defending itself from cyber attacks purportedly launched by Beijing or by groups associated with it. The Trump administration has been tightening the screws on China from a diplomatic, security, and trade perspective. There has been considerable growing debate among Western allies led by the Americans about the downside of military engagement and cooperation with China, with Five Eyes intelligence partners each exchanging their own warnings, a series of discussions that eventually prompted Canada's current top military commander, General Jonathan Vance, to cancel the winter warfare exercises. And then, of course, there's debate over the telecom giant Huawei and its future in Canada. The signs were all there, Burton said, but no one actually woke up to the problem until Kovrig and Spavor were imprisoned. The public has been galvanized, he added, but it doesn't seem to have penetrated fully to the senior levels of the political and economic elite. Burton said that, as weird as it might sound, with everything else that's happened, he believes that there are some within the Canadian establishment who still cling to the notion that if the consular cases of Spavor and Kovrig are resolved, we can go back to business as usual. Interestingly, posted a video in which this individual D said that's exactly what they intend to do with a Biden administration, is go back to business as usual. All right, so that's it for this video. 623 out.